Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're taking a deep dive into something that's probably in your face more than you realize.
Oh, yeah. Definitely a lot going on under the surface with this one.
Meta's advertising standards.
Facebook and Instagram ads.
We're going to break down what you can and can't do, and probably uncover some stuff that'll make you go.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
But this is more than just like a boring list of rules.
No.
We're going behind the scenes to understand the why.
Exactly. It's like understanding the strategy. You know the thinking behind the policies themselves.
Because they're not just some like legal checklist, right?
No, they're really like the blueprint for how Meta wants the entire user experience on their platforms to feel. It's about safety. Yeah, of course. But it's also about keeping people engaged.
So like scrolling through your feed and actually kind of enjoying it.
Exactly. Not just a minefield of like, oh, this is
Awful. So it's got to be this balance. Keeping users happy, but also keeping advertisers happy.
That's it. Keeping those advertisers happy who you know are the ones paying the bills.
Right, the ones keeping the lights on.
Right. And trust me, striking that balance is a tough one.
I bet.
It's like juggling chainsaws while riding a unicycle.
Okay, I'm getting a visual, and I'm not sure I like it. But all right, so to make sure they don't like fall off the unicycle,
Yeah.
Meta has established some core principles to guide their approach.
Yes. Those are kind of like the guardrails.
On the unicycle.
Right.
Okay, I'm with you. So what's the first principle?
Well, the top priority for them is protecting people from unsafe and discriminatory practices. And we're not just talking about like banning illegal products.
Right, that makes sense. But how did they define discriminatory in the context of advertising? Because isn't all advertising kind of targeted at specific groups in one way or another?
You're absolutely right, and that's actually what makes this so interesting. Before these policies were in place, advertisers could actually target their ads based on some pretty sensitive stuff. Like, imagine applying for a loan. And the only reason you're seeing an ad for that specific loan is because of your race or something. Not really a level playing field, is it?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it like that. So these policies are meant to prevent that kind of targeted exclusion
Exactly.
so that everyone has like a more equitable experience.
That's right. And it goes beyond just obvious categories like race or gender. They're also looking at religious affiliation, sexual orientation, disability, serious diseases, you name it.
Wow. So really trying to make sure everyone has equal access to information, at least when it comes to the ads they're seeing.
At least in the advertising space, yeah.
Yeah, that's a powerful concept. All right, so discriminatory practices are out. What's next?
Well, principle number 2 is all about keeping those fraudsters and scammers at bay. You know the type. So Meta is cracking down on anything that's deceptive or misleading, particularly when it comes to your money or your personal data.
Okay, so like no more ads that sound like a prince from Nigeria needs my bank account info.
Exactly.
All right, got it.
Yeah.
What's principle number 3 about?
This one's all about creating a positive user experience. They don't want you to see ads that make you feel like shocked or disgusted or bad about yourself.
So like no more ads that make me feel like I need to buy a miracle cream to fix my problem areas?
You got it. And it's deeper than just avoiding offensive content. It's about preventing anything that promotes that negative self-perception, especially when it comes to weight loss or health.
Right, so just scrolling through my feed, I shouldn't be bombarded with messages that make me feel inadequate.
Exactly.
That makes sense. I'm sensing a theme here. Are all these principles about protecting the user?
You're picking up on it, but this next one is actually about protecting everyone, including Meta themselves.
Okay, how so?
It's all about transparency.
Oh, interesting. Okay, tell me more about this transparency thing.
So Meta has this incredible resource called the Ad Library.
Okay.
It's basically a public record of all the ads running on their platforms,
Right.
particularly the ones that are about social issues, elections, politics, the hot button stuff.
Wow, so anyone can just go and see who's paying for these ads and what they're saying.
That's right. Complete transparency.
That's kind of cool, actually. It holds everyone accountable.
Right. Like you can see how the sausage is made.
All right, I'm sold. I like transparency. But how does Meta actually enforce all of this? They must see millions of ads every day.
That's where their ad review process comes in, and it's pretty sophisticated. Think automation meets human oversight.
So not just algorithms calling the shot.
No. It's like a 2-step verification. First, the automated system scans for obvious red flags. Keywords, images that might violate the policies.
Right.
If something gets flagged, then it goes to a real person.
So there are actual humans looking at these ads.
Absolutely. And the whole process is surprisingly quick. Typically, you'll get a decision within 24 hours.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good.
No more waiting for weeks and wondering.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
But what happens if an ad slips through the cracks? Like it gets approved, but then turns out to be problematic.
Well, that can happen.
Right.
That brings us to another point. Ads can actually be re-reviewed even after they've gone live. It's like a safety net.
Oh, so it's not like once you're in, you're in.
Yeah.
They're still watching.
They're always watching. And the consequences of violating those policies can be pretty serious.
Like what kind of trouble are we talking?
Well, at the very least, your ad gets rejected.
Okay.
But it can go way beyond that. Meta can actually restrict your business assets.
Wait, what does that mean?
We're talking losing access to your ad account or even your entire Facebook page.
Whoa. Okay, so it's high stakes.
It is. So playing by the rules is important. But even if you technically follow every guideline, there's one more thing to consider. Ad quality.
Ad quality.
Mm-hmm.
How does that fit into all of this?
Even if your ad doesn't violate any policies, if it's just a bad ad, it's going to perform poorly. Think about it. Have you ever seen an ad that was so bad that you just immediately scrolled past it?
Oh, all the time. I'm pretty good at tuning those out.
We all are. So Meta considers things like blurry images, typos, confusing messaging. Does it have a call to action? All that stuff factors into their algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
So a low-quality ad, even if it's following the rules, it's not going to reach as many people.
So it's not enough to just avoid getting penalized?
No.
You have to actually make good ads.
You got to create ads that are both compliant and engaging.
All right, I'm with you.
Okay.
So let's shift gears a little bit. I want to talk about something I think often gets overlooked in these conversations. Meta's community standards.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
How do those tie into advertising?
These are kind of like the overarching code of conduct.
Okay.
For everything that happens on Meta's platforms, it dictates what kind of content is and isn't allowed, whether it's in a post, a comment, or an ad.
So even if my ad technically follows the advertising guidelines, it could still get flagged if it violates these broader community standards.
Exactly. It's a double layer of protection.
Okay.
Making sure that the overall environment on those platforms stays safe, respectful, aligned with their values.
Right. Okay, so that makes sense. But these community standards must cover, like, a ton of ground, right?
Oh, tons. We're talking child safety, hate speech, misinformation, violence, the whole 9 yards.
Okay, that's a lot. I'm curious, though, what are some examples of content that would violate these community standards and get an ad rejected?
Well, let's start with something pretty straightforward. Child sexual exploitation, abuse, and nudity. Meta has a zero-tolerance policy here.
Right. Of course, that's a no-brainer. But what are they actually doing to combat this? I mean, how can they possibly monitor all that content?
They've invested a lot in technology that can detect and remove this type of content. And they work closely with organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to report any instances they find.
Okay, that's good to hear. What other types of content kind of fall under this umbrella?
Well, another big one is anything related to dangerous organizations and individuals. Think terrorist groups, hate groups, criminal organizations. Anyone posing a threat to public safety.
Okay, so no promoting your favorite extremist group on Facebook.
Nope, not gonna fly. They take this very seriously, and any content that praises or supports these groups is strictly prohibited.
All right, makes sense. What about discrimination? We talked about it in the context of targeting. Does it also come up in the community standards?
It does. The community standards prohibit any content that attacks or demeans people based on their protected characteristics. So those categories we talked about before, like race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, all of that applies here as well.
Got it. So even if you're technically targeting your ad correctly, you can't use any language or imagery that's discriminatory or hateful.
That's right. It's all about creating an environment where everyone feels safe and respected.
Yeah. Okay, I'm starting to get the big picture here. It's not just about following a checklist. It's about being ethical and responsible and contributing to a positive experience online for everyone.
You got it. And that leads us nicely into another area covered by the community standards, hate speech.
Yeah, that's a big one. Everyone's always talking about hate speech online. What exactly does Meta consider to be hate speech?
Basically, any attack on people based on their protected characteristics. It could be inciting violence using slurs or stereotypes, spreading harmful misinformation about a group.
So if you're promoting hatred or bigotry, your ad's gone.
Yep, even if it technically follows the advertising guidelines.
Right, okay, makes sense. It seems like they're drawing a clear line in the sand.
They are. They want to foster a sense of community and belonging. Hate speech has no place in that.
Okay, this is all really helpful. I'm getting a much clearer sense of what Meta is trying to do with these community standards. But what about misinformation?
That's another big one.
We live in a world where fake news can go viral in like seconds.
That's right. So they have a pretty robust fact-checking program, and they prohibit any ads that contain debunked or misleading information.
So they're actively working to prevent the spread of false information through ads.
They are, and they're also cracking down on ads that discourage vaccination.
Oh, that's huge. Especially with all the misinformation surrounding vaccines these days. It's good to know they're prioritizing public health.
Yeah, they've recognized the potential harm that can cause, and they're taking a strong stance against it.
Okay, so we've covered discriminatory practices, fraud, user experience, transparency, community standards. It seems like they've thought of everything.
Oh, almost. We've still got a lot to cover.
There's more.
Oh, yeah. Buckle up, because next we're going to dive into what they call restricted content.
Restricted content.
Oh,
Okay, so is that different from like banned content?
It is. It's kind of like a gray area.
Okay, I see.
Certain things aren't outright banned, but they come with their own set of special rules.
Got it. Like what kind of stuff are we talking about here?
Well, let's start with something that might surprise you. Alcohol. You can actually advertise alcohol on Meta,
Oh, really?
but you have to follow some pretty strict rules.
So it's not just a free-for-all.
No. You can't just show people chugging beers and cocktails. You have to comply with all local laws regarding alcohol advertising, and you can't target ads to anyone under the legal drinking age in their country. And some countries might have additional restrictions or even ban it altogether.
Okay, so there's a lot of nuance to it. What about dating ads? I see those all the time on Facebook and Instagram.
Dating ads are interesting because they actually require prior written permission from Meta. You can't just create an ad and put it up there. You have to apply for permission and show them that you're following their specific guidelines for dating ads.
Wait, really? Why is that? I mean, it's just a dating app.
Well, you have to remember that dating is a sensitive topic.
Right.
And there's a lot of potential for, abuse or exploitation. So Meta wants to make sure that those ads are responsible and respectful, and that they're not targeting vulnerable groups.
Okay, so they're being extra cautious with that category. What other kinds of things fall under this restricted content?
Health and wellness is a big one.
Okay, yeah.
So think weight loss products, cosmetic procedures, supplements, anything that falls under that umbrella.
I can see why that would be closely regulated.
They have age restrictions in place, and they're very careful about anything that could promote negative self-perception or body image issues.
Right, so if you're selling a weight loss product, you can't just show like before and after photos that make people feel bad about themselves.
Exactly. You have to focus on the positive aspects of health and wellness without resorting to shame or unrealistic beauty standards.
Right. Okay, makes sense. What else? This is fascinating. It's like a master class in responsible advertising.
And we're just getting started. Here's a quick one that's pretty straightforward. The sale of body parts and fluids is completely banned.
Okay. Yep.
No exceptions.
That's pretty clear cut. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that one.
Probably not. And of course, we can't forget about tobacco and nicotine products. Those are banned as well, except for approved cessation products.
So no vaping ads, but you could advertise nicotine gum or patches.
Exactly.
Right.
And finally, you have the big one. Weapons, ammunition, and explosives are strictly prohibited. No exceptions.
No gun ads on Facebook, got it. What about content that's just considered objectionable? Is that different from the restricted category?
Yes, it is. Objectionable content focuses on things that might lead to negative user experiences, even if they're not necessarily illegal or harmful.
So it's kind of like, we're not going to ban this outright, but we'd rather not see it on our platform.
Exactly. It's about maintaining a certain tone and atmosphere. So, for example, adult nudity and sexual activity fall under this category.
Okay, so no explicit content.
No sexually suggestive content, even if it's technically legal.
Right. They want to keep things family friendly.
Exactly. What about profanity?
Oh, yeah. Is that allowed in ads?
Generally not.
Okay.
They want to keep things relatively clean and avoid using language that might be offensive to some users.
Makes sense. Any other objectionable categories we should know about?
Yes. Another big one is anything that violates user privacy or makes claims about someone's personal attributes without their consent.
Okay, so you can't share someone's personal info, and you can't say things like, this person is a insert sensitive attribute here without their permission.
Exactly. It's all about respecting people's privacy and boundaries. It goes back to that theme of creating a safe and inclusive online environment.
Right, okay. So we've talked about unacceptable content, restricted content, objectionable content.
Right.
What about intellectual property? I imagine that's a big one in the world of advertising.
Huge. Intellectual property infringement is a major no-no.
So no using someone else's copyrighted material without permission. No stealing logos, trademarks, ripping off someone's creative work.
Nope. Meta takes this very seriously, and they have systems in place to detect and remove ads that violate intellectual property rights.
Okay, I think we've covered all the forbidden stuff now.
Well, almost. There's one more we need to talk about.
Okay, what's that?
It's actually one of the most controversial and complex areas of meta advertising. Social issue, electoral, or political advertising.
Okay, I knew we were going to get to this.
Mm.
It feels like this type of advertising is always generating headlines and sparking debate.
For good reason.
Right.
These ads have the potential to really influence public opinion, even sway elections.
Right.
So Meta has a whole other set of rules and requirements for this category.
So it's not just about following the general advertising guidelines.
Not at all. Advertisers who want to run these types of ads have to go through a special authorization process. They need to verify their identity, disclose who's funding the ads, and comply with a whole host of additional regulations.
Wow, so it's way more complicated than just creating an ad and throwing it up on Facebook.
It is. They want to make sure that these types of ads are transparent and accountable, and that they're not being used to spread misinformation or manipulate voters. They might also restrict these ads based on local laws or pre-election periods.
Okay, I see why this is such a sensitive area. It's not just about selling products anymore. It's about shaping public discourse.
Exactly. And that brings us to our last category for today, product and format specific policies.
Okay, so I'm guessing this is where it gets even more granular.
You got it. So in addition to all these general policies we've talked about, Meta also has specific rules for different types of ads and ad formats. For example, they have special restrictions for lead ads.
Lead ads, those are the ones where you click on an ad and it takes you to a form to fill out, right?
That's right. Lead ads are a great way to collect information from potential customers, but they also raise some privacy concerns.
Okay, I can see that.
So Meta limits the type of information you can ask for in a lead ad. You can't just ask for someone's social security number or their credit card details.
Right, so you can't use it for, like, phishing scams.
Exactly. And they have similar restrictions for entertainment-related ads. If you're promoting a movie, a TV show, or a video game, you need to get prior written permission from Meta. And you have to be really careful about targeting your ads to the right age group, especially if the content is violent or mature.
So no advertising a horror movie to a bunch of 8-year-olds?
Exactly. And the list goes on and on.
Right.
They have specific rules for everything, from financial products to gambling to travel to real estate.
Wow. This is a lot to take in. It seems like there's a rule for everything.
There is.
Yeah.
But it all comes back to creating a safe, respectful, positive advertising experience for everyone.
Okay, I'm starting to get the hang of this. But before we move on, there's one thing I'm still curious about. We talked about how Meta can restrict your business assets if you violate their policies. But are there any other policies that affect a business's ability to advertise on these platforms?
Yes, actually, there are a few more things to keep in mind. They have policies related to account integrity, cybersecurity, and data use.
Okay, so basically, you have to be a legitimate business operating in good faith.
That's right.
You can't be promoting like malicious code or phishing scams or anything like that. And you have to be careful about how you use the data you collect through meta advertising.
You got it. It's all about trust and accountability.
Right. But I have a feeling there's even more to it, right?
There is.
Are there things that people might not realize about meta advertising, like hidden gems buried in the fine print?
Oh, yeah, definitely. For example, did you know that once your ad is displayed, it becomes public information?
Wait, really?
Yeah.
So anyone can see it, even if they're not the target audience.
That's right. And people can even reshare it outside of Meta's platforms. So as an advertiser, you have to remember you're not just reaching your target audience.
Right.
Your ad could be seen by anyone.
Wow. That's something to think about when you're creating those ads. What else should we know?
Well, here's an interesting one. Political ads are kept in the ad library for 7 years, and that includes spending and delivery data.
So if you're running a political campaign, your ads are basically part of the public record.
They are. Transparency is key.
Wow, this is all incredibly insightful. It feels like we've only scratched the surface.
We have.
But I'm already feeling much more informed about how this all works.
Good. We've covered a lot of ground, but there's still more to explore.
All right, deep divers, welcome back.
Yeah.
Last time we went down the rabbit hole of Meta's advertising standards.
We did. A lot of layers to unpack there.
So many layers. We covered everything from discriminatory ads to
Oh, yeah.
the wild world of restricted content.
Like, you can advertise alcohol, but you can't
Right.
just show people, like, chugging beers.
Right. There are rules,
Rules upon rules.
but we're not done yet. We've still got more to uncover.
Oh, yeah. Today, we're going even deeper. We're going to explore the fascinating and sometimes controversial world of data use restrictions.
Okay, I am intrigued. We talked about data privacy last time, but I want to get into the specifics. What are some things advertisers need to know about how they can and can't use Meta's advertising data?
So let's imagine you're an advertiser and you've just run a successful campaign on Facebook.
Okay.
You've got all this data about who clicked on your ads, who engaged with your content, who ultimately made a purchase. Gold mine, right?
Right.
But Meta has some very specific rules about how you can use that information.
Okay, that makes sense. They don't want advertisers just running wild with user data, but what are some things you can't do?
Well, for starters, you can only share that data with someone who's working directly for you,
Okay.
like a service provider or a
Yeah.
marketing agency. You can't just sell that data or give it away to third parties, especially not without the user's consent.
Okay, so no selling user data to data brokers or creating those creepy shadow profiles that follow you around the internet.
Nope, not allowed. And it's not just about sharing the data. You're also responsible for making sure your service providers are handling that data properly, keeping it confidential.
So if my marketing agency accidentally leaks a bunch of user data, I'm still on the hook.
You are. That's why it's so important to choose those partners carefully.
Okay, that's a lot of responsibility. What about using that data for targeting purposes? Are there any limitations there?
There are. You can use the data to figure out which audiences are responding best to your ads, but you can't use it to track people outside of Meta.
So I couldn't take the data I get from Facebook ads and use it to create some super specific profile of a person, like tracking their every move on the internet.
Nope. No way. And you definitely can't transfer that data to other ad networks or data brokers.
So it's like they're saying this data is for your eyes only. Use it wisely. Don't use it to build some kind of Orwellian surveillance system.
Basically, it all comes down to respecting user privacy, building trust, and making sure data isn't being misused.
All right, and speaking of privacy, let's talk about something that's been making a lot of noise in the tech world lately.
Okay.
The EU's Digital Services Act.
Oh, yes. The DSA. This is a big one.
Yeah, it seems like it's shaking things up. So how does the DSA impact Meta's advertising policies?
Well, one of the DSA's goals is to create a more transparent online environment. And that means more transparency in advertising, too.
So Meta has to be more upfront about who's behind the ads.
Exactly. No more hiding behind vague company names. They have to provide very specific information about who's paying for each ad.
So if I see an ad for a political campaign, I should be able to find out exactly who's funding it.
You should. The DSA wants to give users more information so they can make informed decisions about the content they're seeing.
I like that. It's about empowering the user.
It is.
This is all really interesting stuff. It feels like we're seeing a major shift in how online advertising works, especially with these new regulations. It seems like Meta's having to constantly adapt.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constantly evolving landscape, and who knows what the future holds. There are so many factors at play. Technology is always changing. User expectations are changing. The legal landscape is constantly evolving. It's a lot to keep up with.
It is. So with all that in mind, let's talk about the future.
Okay.
What does the future hold for advertising on Meta? What's your crystal ball telling you?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd probably be on a beach somewhere.
Fair enough.
But while we can't predict the future exactly, we can look at some of the key trends and challenges that are likely to shape the landscape of meta advertising in the years to come.
Okay, I like that approach. So let's break it down. What are some of the biggest things that will influence the future of advertising on Meta?
Well, one of the most significant, and this is probably not a surprise, is privacy.
Right.
We're seeing it everywhere. Apple's privacy changes, GDPR, CCPA, and now the DSA.
It's like a tidal wave of privacy regulations.
It is, and Meta is definitely feeling the pressure.
I bet.
They're having to completely rethink their approach to data collection, targeting ad delivery. They need to find ways to keep advertisers happy while still protecting user privacy.
Yeah.
And complying with all these new rules.
It's a tough balancing act, for sure.
It is, and it's going to require some serious innovation.
So what are some ways they might navigate this new world of privacy-focused advertising?
Well, one area that has a lot of potential is artificial intelligence. AI can be used to personalize ads in a way that respects user privacy.
So instead of targeting me based on the fact that I just searched for new running shoes,
Right.
an ad might target me based on my age group or my location or
Oh,
the fact that I generally like fitness.
exactly. It's about finding that balance.
Okay, that makes sense. AI could definitely play a key role. What other trends are you seeing on the horizon?
Well, another huge trend is the rise of short-form video content. TikTok, Instagram Reels. Everyone's attention span is shrinking these days. We want everything in bite-sized chunks.
So true.
So Meta's going to have to adapt to this. They need to find ways to make ads that are engaging in just a few seconds.
So no more 3-minute long ads with cheesy jingles.
Probably not. Advertisers are going to have to get a lot more creative.
Okay, I'm with you. Short-form video is definitely a big one.
Yeah.
What about the metaverse? Everyone's talking about it, but it still feels a little sci-fi to me. Do you think it will really change things for meta advertising?
It's hard to say because it's so early, but it definitely has the potential to be a game changer.
How so? I'm having trouble picturing how advertising would even work in a virtual world.
Well, imagine trying on clothes virtually before you buy them, or attending a virtual concert sponsored by your favorite brand. The metaverse could create entirely new ways for advertisers to interact with customers.
Okay, that's pretty wild. So the lines between the physical world and the digital world are just going to keep getting blurrier.
They are, and that's going to create both opportunities and challenges for advertisers. They're going to have to get creative and think outside the box.
It sounds like the future of meta advertising is going to be pretty exciting.
It is, and probably a little bumpy. But we'll be here to guide you through it.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We spent the last 2 episodes exploring the intricate world of Meta's advertising standards.
We've seen how they're trying to balance user safety with
Right.
advertiser needs. And
Keeping everyone happy.
Exactly.
And how they're adapting to new technologies and things like
Metaverse.
the metaverse.
Right.
It's a lot to keep track of. But before we wrap up, I want to bring it back to you, the listener. You're the one scrolling through those feeds, seeing these ads every single day.
Right. You're the one who's actually experiencing this firsthand.
Exactly. So let's talk about what all of this means for you. How can understanding these standards actually make you a more empowered user?
Well, for starters, it helps you become a more informed consumer. You know what's allowed, what's not allowed. You can spot those ads that are maybe pushing the boundaries or even crossing the line.
So if I see an ad that seems like it's discriminatory or misleading or just straight up wrong, I can report it to Meta.
Absolutely, you have a voice.
Okay.
Meta gives you the tools to flag content that violates their standards. And that feedback can actually make a difference. It helps create a more responsible advertising environment for everyone.
So it's not just about being a passive consumer. We can actually hold advertisers accountable
Exactly.
and help make the internet a better place.
That's the goal. And besides just reporting bad ads, understanding these standards can also help you be more critical of the ads you see. You can start to notice the techniques that advertisers are using to try to influence you.
Like those ads that follow you around everywhere after you've looked at a product online.
Oh, yeah, that's a perfect example. It's called retargeting.
Right.
And it's totally legitimate, but knowing that it exists makes you more aware of how your online activity is being used to target you with ads.
Okay, I see how this knowledge can be really helpful. It's like having a secret decoder ring for the world of online advertising.
I like that analogy. The more you understand how it works, the more control you have over your own experience.
So we've talked about how understanding these standards can help us be more informed consumers. But are there any potential downsides? Like, could all these rules and regulations actually have some unintended consequences?
That's a good question, and it's something that people are debating right now. Some people worry that too much regulation could stifle creativity in advertising. Like, everyone's so afraid of breaking the rules that all the ads just become super bland and boring.
So it's like a trade-off between safety and creativity.
Exactly. We want to protect people, but we also don't want to create an environment where all the ads are just completely uninspired.
Right. It's about finding that balance.
Finding that sweet spot. And I think the key is to find ways to regulate advertising in a way that encourages responsibility without completely stifling creativity. So it's an ongoing conversation. And it will probably keep evolving as technology changes and user behavior changes. What about the bigger picture, though? What does the future hold for online advertising in general?
Well, as we've discussed, there are a lot of unknowns. But one thing is for sure. Online advertising is not going away.
Right.
It's a huge part of our digital world, and it will continue to adapt and evolve. The key is to make sure that evolution benefits both advertisers and users.
So what can we do to ensure that happens?
I think the most important thing is to stay informed, stay engaged, and use your voice. As users, we have a responsibility to understand how online advertising works and to hold platforms and advertisers accountable. We need to demand a digital environment that is both engaging and ethical.
Well said. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of Meta's advertising standards.
It's been a pleasure.
And remember, the power is in your hands. By understanding the rules of the game, you can create a better online experience for everyone. Until next time, happy scrolling.